call to handle all of your company's administrative issues and problems. Call 800-707-1477 or visit the Executive Services website, www.xscbs.com, for more information.
KCAA.
The following program is produced by the AM First Radio Network and distributed by Global American Broadcasting, the GAB Radio Network.
Attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, Paulina Hiller, and Andrea Rodeman. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our community. This week, we'll be talking about, our subject was, Am I my brother's keeper? We'll talk about police brutality, black on black crime, self-hate, and haters. I think I'm going to begin by talking about a subject that I talk about quite a bit on this show, is self-hate. And basically, the idea of self-hate is described as internalizing the prejudice of the dominant culture, right? So when you look at American society and you think about the dominant culture, right? Obviously, the dominant culture in America is European Americans, right? Mm-hmm. And so basically, you're talking about a society that is just a society with many different type of subcultures, right? Mm-hmm. And basically, for the most part, all subcultures have been able to coexist with the dominant culture, mm-hmm. right? However, when you talk about the subculture of the African American culture, mm-hmm. then there's always been this conflict of cultures when it comes to the issue of the dominant culture and the subculture of the African Americans, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, for me, the way that I see the African American culture is that it's pretty much American culture. Mm-hmm. Okay. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Does everybody agree? Rosa?
Yeah.
Andrea? Yeah. Paulina?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you go around the world and you think about America and America's culture, the thing that most people in most societies, the part of our culture, and when I say our culture, the so-called American culture, that is emulated the most or known the most is primarily Black culture. Mm-hmm. I mean, would anybody disagree with that? Right? And so I think that when you look at that whole idea, I believe where the conflict in cultures come to play is when the dominant culture and a subculture cannot dominate in the same space. In other words, if Black culture is the dominant culture, which in essence it really is, then there actually is a conflict of culture.
Yes.
And in order for the dominant, the at least perceived dominant culture, in order to exist and maintain its existence, and when I'm talking about the existence of the culture, I'm talking about from the very beginning. America, at the bare essence of American culture, is the oppression of Black people. Right? Will we disagree? Would anybody disagree with me on that issue?
No.
Huh?
Nope.
And so if that is part of it, in order for the dominant culture at some point in time to change that culture, there has to be some sort of cultural shift.
Yeah, definitely.
And in this particular case, in our society, there's never been a cultural shift. Mm-hmm. And so in everybody else's culture, there's really no need for them to do a cultural shift because the subcultures among other groups does not really conflict with the dominant culture. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So in order for African Americans, in order for us to actually operate under the normal cultural norms and mores as many other cultures do, then if we were to operate under that in what I consider to be a natural space, then I believe that there's automatically this conflict between black culture and American and so-called dominant
The
American
dominant.
culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they've always been this concerted effort to always uh, make sure that the prejudice of the dominant culture is internalized by the African American people.
Mm-hmm.
And the internalization of this prejudice creates this self-hatred,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it comes naturally.
Yeah.
It's not necessary for anybody else's culture, but it's necessary for our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically, in order for the African American culture to thrive like everybody else's culture, or as a subculture, in the same space of what we consider to be European American, there is just a natural conflict,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that natural conflict basically takes away from the dominant European American culture.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a vested interest in making sure that African Americans internalize
Mm-hmm.
that prejudice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You have to disrupt our culture, because if you don't disrupt our culture, then it's going to create a cultural crisis within the European American society,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
And so, and what's also interesting about our culture is that we're just full and they're always giving us, and it also happened on the continent, like during the scramble for Africa,
Mm-hmm.
during the colonization of Africa, they basically destabilized an entire continent of people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so while and if you listen, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kwame Nkrumah, and Kwame Nkrumah was the former president of Ghana. And during his presidency, before he came in, he actually came to the U.S. and studied at Lincoln University. But when he goes back, he was one of the foremost Pan-Africanists. Kwame Nkrumah, and I'm going to tell you, hopefully we'll be able to hit this before the break. Kwame Nkrumah, when he went back to Ghana, became the president of Ghana. He married an Egyptian, right? And so a lot of people were very critical of Kwame Nkrumah for marrying an Egyptian, because they felt like, look, you're a nationalist, you're a Pan-Africanist, and you've married, and in fact, when he married her, she only spoke Arabic. And for those people who know, Kwame Nkrumah could not speak Arabic. And so the international community was confused by it. The Pan-Africanist community on the continent was confused by it. But I think that what he was doing ultimately was that he was trying to show people that the idea of colorism, right, was created by Europeans in general, but European Americans specifically as it relates to us, right? And so you have to look at, and we talked about this before, when you think about, there's no such thing as Asian nationalism, because basically Vietnamese, Koreans, Filipinos, every ethnic group on the continent of Asia don't see each other the same, right? They're separated not by color, they're separated by culture, right? That's the same thing in the Arabs, right? The Arabs are separated by culture. Arabs and Saudis, I mean, the Egyptians and Saudis don't see each other as the same. The Lebanese, the Palestinians, they're all different people, right? So it's not based upon color. The same thing exists even for the Latino community, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rosa. El Salvadorians, Guatemalans, Colombians. I had a lady that come into my office one day who I said I thought she was from Mexico, and she was from Colombia. She was so offended that she wanted her money back, and she didn't want to hire me because she said, I'm not Mexican. I'm from Colombia.
Wow.
Right? So the whole idea is that this is a normal idea of culture. Culture is never really based upon color. So what's happening in our community is part of the self-hatred comes in is because they have made color the centerpiece of our culture. And when color is the centerpiece of your culture, then basically we have this internal conflict within specifically African Americans about color, right? In our community, we focus so much on that issue, and so much so that basically that was the entire. When you think about the whole Willie Lynch concept, when he talked about the light people against the dark people, when he talked about the old against the young, when he talked about so the whole culture of white America in its very inception, part of the entire culture was to create conflict among African people. You see what I'm saying? That is part of the culture. That am I wrong?
From anywhere you want. There are many means to connect to the Gab Radio Network remotely, and our staff of highly trained engineers and producers will make you sound like you're right here in studio. So, if you want to be on the Gab Radio Network, the same network that hosts the Small Business Advocate, Radio MD, and the Federalist, send an email right now to sales@gabradionetwork.com. That's sales@gabradionetwork.com.
Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch. Welcome back to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew, where we're continuing with our discussion. Am I my brother's keeper? Now, before we went to the break, we had this discussion of trying to analyze the whole idea of self-hatred. And I wanted to talk about the issue of self-hatred because I think that tends to be, at least for me, one of the most critical issues about how we're going to be able to move forward and progress as a community. I mean, I think that in order to have this collective, collective community that's going to be able to do things in unison and do things that's going to actually be productive, then we're going to have to get past this whole idea of centuries and centuries of a dominant culture teaching a subculture how to hate themselves, right? And so whenever, I mean, culture is culture. I mean, it doesn't change. It's the same wherever you go.
Exactly.
Right. And I think we can't minimize the significance of the norms and mores of a culture and how you cannot, at least when you think about other groups, because other people say, well, you know, other groups are able to come to this country and they're able to flourish and they're able to be successful. But the dominant culture was not established based upon the destruction of any other culture other than the Black culture. I mean, literally, that was part of the American fabric.
Exactly.
That it was created that way. Because I mean, you have to. I mean, I want everybody to sit down and just imagine this for a second. Do you really know what it takes to enslave another human being? Can just imagine that. I mean, do you? That's hard.
Yeah.
Their job was not easy. Because what you have to do, it's one thing to physically oppress somebody. You know what I mean? Because if you physically imprison someone, eventually a couple of things are going to happen. Either they're going to get away or they're going to kill you.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, am I wrong? I mean, that's humans aren't built to be treated like chattel. You know what I mean? Just imagine. I mean, you're talking about the strongest of the strongest human being that you have taken, and now what you're going to do is you're going to oppress this human being, and make sure not only physically but mentally you have to make them understand that what you're doing to them, they're just worthless. That you have to make someone feel like that they're relegated to this status in life.
Exactly.
And not only do you have to teach that person that they're relegated to that status in life, then you have to teach everybody else. You see, the thing about it is that people say, well, you know, we all did not own slaves. But the reality of it is that the ones who owned slaves had to make the dominant society or everybody else in the dominant society feel the same way.
Exactly.
Because if you have an overseer and you want that overseer to make sure that when they're in the plantation, that these people are people that you are superior to and that you got to beat them if they don't do what you tell them to do, you have to sell it to everybody else too.
Yeah.
Not only that, then when you're talking about other slaves, because just keep in mind, some overseers happen to have been Black.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So imagine a Black overseer in the field, right? You have to make him understand that their lives are useless, that you have to get in your head that you're a chattel. But and so now you've got that. Then you move past it, and you go past the Reconstruction period. Now, during the Reconstruction period, all the way up to the Jim Crow, all the way up to the Civil Rights Movement, it was the same thing, right? That at the very fabric of our society was color.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Specifically, Black and white. So there's a vested interest in the culture, the dominant culture, to make sure that this particular subculture is dysfunctional.
Exactly.
Because a functional Black subculture is going to look a whole lot different than a functional Vietnamese subculture or a functional Korean subculture. And the reason why is because there's a conflict. Right? And the conflict is that if you have a functional Black subculture, it automatically will create a dysfunctional white dominant culture.
Gotcha.
Do you disagree? Rosa, talk to me, political scientist.
I think you're spot on. I mean, it's all under the umbrella of internalized racism, right?
Right.
Because if we talk about color and race, it's a social construct. So this social construct is affecting people in this subculture, and this is expressed through the inner and the interpersonal. The inner is seen when you talk about self-hatred, low self-esteem that people of specific communities of colors have. And the interpersonal is seen in the fact that the system itself rewards individuals that try to promote the white supremacist agenda, like you gave the example of the overseer in that plantation that tends to be black. And that in itself enables this dominant group to continue oppressing all of the subcultures.
Right.
So it's all kind of like this social construct that is under the umbrella of internalized racism that keeps cultures at the bottom fighting themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I think it keeps us fighting because the simple fact is, I think there's so many different platforms that have been utilized to keep us in this state. So it's no more of a physical slavery, because if I use these platforms to mentally ingrain all of these ideas in your head, whether it be the media, whether it be the music, so forth and so on, then I don't have to worry about physically containing you, because you're going to put yourself in a position where you're going to allow yourself to go to prison. You're going to put yourself in a position that you're not going to feel that you're inferior. You're going to feel inferior. I mean, it goes back to a book I read with Carter G. Woodson, where he said, if I can control the way a person thinks, I can tell him to walk through the back door. And if there's not a back door there, then you're going to create a back door to go through, because I'm so mentally ingrained in your thought pattern that you're going to create that to go through, even though it's not one there. And so I think that over the history, we have the Willie Lynch, letter and so forth and so on. And I think it's so ingrained into us to where it's just the norm for us. And that's what makes it so difficult for us to kind of come together, because we just so damaged, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been, and one of the things is that, and I want to ask you a question. Well, actually, I want you to tell me something. I'm going to direct this question. This is a quiz for you, Andrea. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So, we often, in sociology, there's a term always used called deviant. Right? A deviant, basically, from a sociological perspective, is someone who acts in a way that is unacceptable to a particular culture. Right? So would you agree that in its bare essence of Black culture in America, that if you act in a way that is contrary to the dominant society, then that dominant society is going to consider you to be a deviant, even if that act may be acceptable in somebody else's culture, if that makes any sense?
Absolutely. That's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I was just telling my daughter a few days ago she wanted to get some braids, some colored braids.
Right.
And I was trying to explain to her, you can't get your hair.
Hey, you know what? Don't lose that thought. I want you to begin there as soon as we come back, as we're getting ready to go to the break, and just please start from that. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
Nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer. while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew. In our discussion on Am I My Brother's Keeper? And specifically right now, we're actually talking about self-hate. So before we went to the break, Andrea, can you kind of chime in and let us know, you know, what you were talking about, a situation you had with your daughter?
Yeah, and I was explaining to her, she wanted to get some braids.
She wanted to get some braids, you know, bright colored braids or what have you. And I was explaining to her that, you know, Mary Sue can get those same braids and it's nothing, but you get those braids, you're going to be looked at as ghetto, you know, a hood rat. You know, but if she, you know, if a white girl gets it, it's going to be looked at as different. Same thing with sagging. If a young, which I think is ignorant in all forms, I don't care what color you are, but young black boy, he's up to something. He's a deviant. White boy does it. Oh, he's, you know, he's just trying to be black. It's a phase. You know, it'll pass. He's just trying to be black. Little black boy does it. Look at that devious nigga, that ignorant nigga. You know, so yeah, that's just the society that we live in. We're always going to be judged, and it's strictly based on our color.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think again, going back to the whole idea that, you know, the issue of culture, especially as the way that we've been, and I always go back to the whole idea of Kwame Nkrumah and what he did and trying to understand, like for example, you know, we often use the word African, right? And then the reality of it is that African basically is a European name. Right? The continent is named after, I believe his name is Africanus. It was named after a European. So we're drenched with this whole idea of, even sometimes when we come with some of the most so-called conscious of us, where we really are lost and trying to find something and trying to, you know, embrace our so-called oppressors' idea of us in order to figure out and use it as a way of healing.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? And there's something, you know, wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? I mean, there's something truly wrong with that. And I always use this example of like domestic violence, or like you know, what happens with human trafficking, like prostitution. I mean, you know, the idea is it's not new, right? It's real, and people have, and we don't understand as Black people in our society, that we have been psychologically damaged in many ways, right?
Exactly.
And I know that that is not really a cool way of saying it. Some of us a little bit too proud to even say that, but it's true
Exactly.
because they have uh you know remedies and classes and all kinds of stuff for people who have experienced much less. Just imagine about other groups who always complain that they've been discriminated against. I mean, there's all kinds of little groups that say, they can't take anything that makes them feel different. And so what we're going through is a lot different than what other individuals are going through, where they say, they're so weak, and we live in a society where, any little thing happens and then we get upset, or get mad or feel like we need some sort of psychological, you know, um, uh, you know, healing or whatever. I mean, if you think about what happened to us from the beginning until now, had it not been for our strength, then nobody else would have been able to survive that.
That's right.
It's impossible. That's I mean, you got people right here that are complaining about any little thing, any little bitty thing, but they don't know. But when we talk about it, it's like it's no big thing. I mean, look at this, man. I mean, it's almost like when you sit back and you look at these killings on television of these primarily Black young men and women, and the reaction that the dominant society has when those things happen.
Right.
It's almost like it's surreal.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we fully, as much as upset as we are when we see it, I don't really know if we truly have been able to internalize how bad it really is. As much as they protested, as much as people are saying, this is what, that is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
That someone could actually watch something like that, and then, people are not outraged to an extent that they should be, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so when the dominant culture basically places almost no value on your life, then, it's almost impossible for people to, at some point in time, to internalize that. And then the way that you see some of these people in our communities acting, they're acting as if they have no value for their life. So they've internalized the dominant culture's opinion of them.
Exactly.
And that's the reason why they live like their life is worthless.
Exactly.
And that's why you have young men that do everything they can to destroy themselves, from the way that they look, from the way that they, tattoo up their bodies, to the point where they're literally killing each other over things that are worthless, or killing each other over things that don't even apply to them, like killing themselves over homes and property that they don't even own.
Yeah.
Right.
But Zulu, I got a question. At what point do you ever think that it was a time where our thinking was totally different than what we have today? Could you pinpoint a time back in history where our thinking was totally different, where we thought about each other as individuals, and the village raised the children, so forth and so on, as we typically hear? Was there a time, and if so, what changed from that time?
Well, I think that when you go, I mean, clearly when you're talking about maybe the civil rights era, before the, especially like before the Civil Rights Act, when we were integrated, right? I think that integration really played in many ways, a negative effect, because it was really when you're integrating into a dominant culture, then there's going to be one. You can't integrate into a dominant culture unless the dominant culture is ready to make a cultural shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're trying to
Yes.
you're trying to integrate into a dominant culture, and the only way you're going to integrate into a dominant culture was if you're changing the way that your value system.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're integrating into a dominant culture that devalues your culture, then the only way that you're going to integrate into that culture is to still devalue your culture.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so during that period of time, during because of course we did integrate after the Civil Rights Act, but that movement and idea died to a certain extent with Dr. King and Malcolm. It died. And so when you go, so now the Civil Rights Act is done, let them integrate. So while you're integrating, I'm going to funnel drugs into your community.
Got you.
Right?
That's what
I'm going to, take away your businesses and your means. I'm going to take industry out of the inner cities and put the industry out in the suburbs.
Got you.
So you can't, with all the money that we made back in the 60s and even in the 70s as electricians, as plumbers, as, welders, as construction workers. When is the last time you seen a black plumber? When is the last time you seen a black electrician? When is the last time you seen a black welder? Right? Well, there was just as many black businesses in 1960, if not more, than there are in 2020.
Yeah.
So we were standing still because our culture didn't necessarily move. It's just like I was saying last week. Just imagine if instead of us protesting and boycotting for Rosa Parks to sit on the front of the bus, what if we started our own bus company?
Exactly.
If that was, and then you would employ your own people. You know what I mean?
Got you.
So sometimes necessity can create greatness, but by integrating into the dominant culture, then there was no necessity. We felt like all we needed to do is integrate into the dominant culture, and then everything was going to go away. Right.
Exactly.
But it hasn't. I mean, we have people who, it's just like, for example, when I was thinking about some of these streaming services, and I know Baron Allen didn't he go into a situation where he was having a problem with the streaming.
Exactly.
Because, why don't we have streaming services? Why is Monique mad because Netflix is not giving her enough money? Why don't we have enough in the streaming service that we don't need them to give us money?
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
And we can put out the message that we want to put out in order to educate the people.
We just all we want to do is just become better at sharecropping. But at any rate, please do not touch that dial. We'll continue with
Wow.
There's a new nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer, while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew, where we're continuing with our discussion, Am I My Brother's Keeper? And the idea of self-hatred. One of the things I want to, before we go a little bit farther, just quickly, I want to ask you a question, Paulina.
Yes.
Now I know that you grew up in Europe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So my question to you is that as we're discussing our situation here in America, right? Especially when we're talking about both the way the dominant culture treats us as well as what we have going on in the subculture.
Yes.
Do you believe that is that same theme consistent throughout the African diaspora, specifically as it relates to Africans even in Europe?
I think it does. I think the biggest difference, though, being is that since we have different European countries, each country has a different lookout and opinion towards African Americans in these countries. So, for example, if we take England, there's a way, way, way bigger integration for African Americans in the country of UK. Or in France, even, they're very dominating in culture in France. A lot of the population is actually related to African Americans. And but when we look at countries such as Austria, which is where I was raised, and Germany, even though Germany has predominantly more African Americans than Austria, there's still a huge separation and acceptance and integration of culture between these two. And then you always got to remember that we also have people from, if we generally look at Africa, we also have Middle Eastern refugees come into our countries, and especially in Germany and in Austria with the whole refugee crisis, there has been a huge divide in accepting these refugees in their cultures and integrating these people.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, how, you hear similar themes throughout the world when it comes to Africans, people of African descent, regardless of where, you're going.
Yeah.
But also what's interesting I'm always careful about trying to define, us based upon the dominant society's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is that, just think about this. Imagine this. If you have someone who is of African descent and the other person is of European descent, then they're always going to be considered to be of African descent. They're always, no matter their shade, no matter their color, no matter what, they're going to be considered black.
Exactly.
In fact, there is no identifying with any other culture once you're considered, once there's black, there's black.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of it, I think that, and so the reason why our identification is that way goes all the way back to the fear and the game. So, I mean, so just think about this. You're forced to identify with one side and not the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other dominant society in this country is not going to accept you for being anything different.
Exactly.
And it still goes back to the same thing, is that completely conflicts with their dominance. Right? You see what I'm saying? I mean, so on one hand, the game is, it's almost like you being the most dominant athlete in the world, right? Mentally and physically, nobody can get you, right? You're the most dominant person. So if you're the most dominant athlete in the world, how do you beat the champ? Right? You understand where I'm going with it?
How do you beat the
So
champ?
what I'm saying is that genetically, it's all about it breaks. I mean, I know that people don't like to talk about this because they think that it's like mad science, but it's about genetics.
Yeah.
It's about people not thinking that they're going to no longer exist. Because if you have black in your genes, the blackness will never go away.
Exactly.
Right. Right.
But if you have, I don't care where you are. That's just, let's just be, because if it isn't true, then why do you call everybody with African in their bloodstream black?
Exactly.
It has to be true. If I'm lying, tell me I'm lying. It doesn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're correct.
And it's not something I'm making up. They're making up because they recognize that.
They recognize, exactly.
And it doesn't even matter whether you're talking black Asian, don't matter whether you're talking black Arab, don't matter whether you're talking about black European. Once there's blackness, there's always blackness.
Yeah. Correct.
And so it's like the only way that you can beat the champ is typically to do something underhanded. You can't beat the champ unless you're dominant. And the only reason they're doing it is because they understand genetically that's the truth. There would, if African culture dominated the world, everybody would be black.
Yeah.
There's nobody else that can say that. If your genes are dominant, why is it that when a person that is European has a child with somebody else who is black, the child is automatically black?
Yeah.
If you're the dominant gene.
Yeah.
Right.
Got you.
So your culture automatically is destroyed. It would never exist.
Got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wouldn't exist. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you, I'm not lying. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that, am I saying that white people are bad people? I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Am I saying that? No, look, Joe's in there saying yes. No, I'm not saying that. I mean, it's real talk.
Yeah, it is.
We need to have that discussion.
Yeah.
Why are you so fearful of our success? You can't leave us alone. You're always messing with everything. We get something going good, you have to go out of your way to destroy it.
Ooh, yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you just don't want that success, because my success is your failure.
Mm-hmm.
It has always been that way.
Always.
And until I can't help you in your fear,
Mm-hmm.
because that's really all it is. And it means everything that we do is killing these people, putting your knee on people's neck.
Yeah.
That's the whole game. Wow, we ran out of time.
Man, this is getting good. Good God.
Wow. We got to talk about this next week. But
yeah.
All right. Well, thank everybody for tuning in, both as well as our YouTube and Facebook audience. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, same channel. And until that time, stay blessed.
Radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host Attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatch